This is Benny Chapman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, withoutyourhead.com.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I am Nasty Neil.
This is Annabelle Lecter.
That would make me Terrible Troy.
And joining us, the godfather of gore himself, a true icon in the world of horror, Herschell Gordon Lewis.
Hereafter known as Horrible Herschell, I guess.
Horrible Herschell. I like that. And
that works.
Yeah, and producer, we're going to have to think of one for James. James Saito.
People just call me Gutter Cat.
Gutter Cat.
We call him Satanist.
Excellent.
Satanist Saito.
Yeah, sadist, Satan, whatever.
Satanic Saito.
Satanic Saito. I like that. I think you should run with that one.
Yeah, I'll get some bumper stickers printed up.
Yep, business cards.
Mm-hmm.
Just a name tag.
Exactly. Now James is producing Gordon's new film, and Bloodmania. What made you decide to get back into making films?
This is what I do. I have a good time. I enjoy the business immensely. I feel that too many people who are doing what I do, and as you're aware, Neil, I'm given credit or blame for initiating this entire genre of movie 50 years ago. I feel too many of the movies today are, the word I use is derivative. You think you're watching the same movie over and over and over again. Besides which, they lack a total sense of humor. And I think the industry has gone far enough now that is an element that we can add profitably, both from our point of view in getting people to look at it, and from their point of view, so they don't have to, after they've screened this thing, whether it's in a theater or in their bedroom or on a little handheld device, which I still don't understand as an entertainment medium. After that, they do not say, yeah, I've seen all that before. They don't say that with Herschell Gordon Lewis's Bloodmania.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned comedy, humor. Was that always important to you, to make sure that, even you've got all the gore and all the crazy stuff, that there's, at the end of the day, there's some humor in your films?
I think the whole industry is a joke. So
it's just an unavoidable thing.
Remember back, I know something of a historian of what we do, which is terrifying as a first start. When I shot Bloodfeast has a couple of distinctions. First of all, it was the first splatter film ever by anybody since motion pictures were invented back by Edison or somebody. Second, it had to be one of the cheapest movies anybody ever made. And the combination of that is quite bizarre. And yet, with all those limitations, Bloodfeast has a spot in history. And after I saw that movie, having cut it and being forced to screen my own work, which is like forcing a dog to eat its own excrement, I said to David Friedman, who was my partner at the time, what if we made a decent one? He didn't even understand the statement, the question. So we shot 2000 Maniacs, which was the first one that had even an overtone of humor. As I would sit anonymously in theaters, and we had a big advantage then that we don't have anymore. We're all too high profile to do that. But I would sit there just as though I was somebody who walked into the theater and look for audience reactions, which I wish more people in California would do when they screen some of the stuff that they don't produce, they excrete it. When I looked at that, I saw what got people to move slightly in the chairs, to shift upward a bit, that they were expecting something different. And we gave it to them with little touches of humor. Eventually, with a movie I made called The Gore Girls, humor and gore became 50-50 partners. And that taught me something else about this business. Anybody over the age of, let's say, 45 or 50 felt we should be executed. Anybody under the age of 45 or 50 said, hey, that was entertaining. Well, that's something I hadn't expected about one of my pieces of crap, that somebody would say it's entertaining. So it gave me another dimension on this kind of movie. Now, here we are somewhat down the line. We're shooting a movie called Herschell Gordon Lewis's Bloodmania. We shot it in Calgary. To my absolutely happy surprise, two things were true that I didn't know what would be true. One, crew and cast were as competent as I have ever seen anywhere, and their enthusiasm was beyond what I had seen anywhere. And if Jim says to me, hey, we got to start shooting next week on a new movie, I'll say I'm in, because that was a very, very positive experience for me. And I, believe me, have had experiences, positive and negative, throughout this industry. The other element here was the caliber of the special effects, which were far above what you normally find. As you're, I'm sure, aware, Neil, the industry has shifted from actual effects to CGI, computer-generated imaging. Computer-generated imaging. Often they use it to show 10,000 soldiers swarming the Roman Colosseum, or it's actually 10 soldiers. These Transformer movies are 97% CGI. And sooner, I started to say sooner or later, but it's sooner, the audiences are already catching on, and they're not rejecting it, but they're not accepting it on the same level that the movie is intended. In this movie, the quality of gore, I'm using that word advisedly because that's what these are, they're gory movies, is head and shoulders above anything I have seen from anybody else, regardless of budget. And I grant you that's an outrageous claim, but I challenge anybody who challenges the claim to show me a movie in which the effects are superior to the ones we have in this movie.
That's very
so
cool.
I'm sorry to have taken so many words to answer you, but that's the story there.
No, it's something actually we talk a lot about on the show, and many people in the horror community prefer the practical effects. And we always talk about on the show, when you see a lot of CGI, you can tell it's not there. Like the weight isn't. You can tell that the weight isn't there. There's just something isn't right. Even if you can't pinpoint it, your eye can tell that there's just something not right about it.
That's a really wonderful turnaround, I feel like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I missed what you said.
I was saying that the return to practical effects is really a wonderful thing for people in filmmaking, because so many people, if you wanted to stay current, you were supposed to do CGI, but if you couldn't afford it, it would be horrible. Which it's not that great to begin with. So now to go back to practical effects, it's something that people want, and it's also something that people can do and do well without all the technology surrounding it. That same kind of technology.
We are singing the same song, and I appreciate that, because they can identify with it. People know when they see one of our epics that it's real. And I've many a time have had people say, did you actually, was it a snuff film? Did you actually kill somebody on camera? So what we now do, because the effects have become so realistic, sometimes we'll bring an actor back after he or she is already murdered and do a little dance at the tail end, just to show that it was all a gag. And I did that the first time with great fear that people would say, what the heck is this all about? I reject the whole notion. Instead, they became our partner. It's an amazing business to be in, because we can deal in reality on a realistic basis instead of on a theoretical basis. I love it.
Now, James, besides the title, because you named the movie Herschell Gordon Lewis's Bloodmania, so if you didn't get Herschell involved, it would have been a misleading title. But why did you want to work with Herschell?
Well, I mean, it goes back to, I'm not even going to say the year because it really dates me, but when I was a 10-year-old boy, I saw my first Herschell Gordon Lewis film, and I became a fan. So, I mean, for me, when the opportunity arose to actually do something that I've always wanted to do, work on a film with Herschell. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Thanks a lot.
Well, no, I mean that in the kindest way, but a no-brainer for me because I mean it's an honor, and and as a horror fan my whole life, I mean it's just wonderful. I don't even know what else to say. It's to me it's like a dream. It's very surreal still to this day that I'm doing this. So,
what was the first Herschell movie that you saw?
It was The Wizard of Gore at a drive-in movie theater, double feature. I think Frogs with Ray Milland was the opener. And then
I remember that one.
Yeah, and then Wizard of Gore came on, and I mean, it was kind of an epiphany for me. I'd never seen Gore like that on film, and it opened up a whole new world in my mind of the possibilities, and movies like that, and then later Dawn of the Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, films like that, where you go, wow, Gore, neat, I like it. I mean, it's always been kind of an influence in my tastes in horror, which range from loving universal films to the rare and bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is an anthology film, which that's also starting to make a comeback, and it's something I've always enjoyed. And what was your reasoning behind wanting to do an anthology film?
Well, I think I used to be growing up. I was a big fan of Amicus Films anthologies, and we had initially discussed doing a feature film that Herschell had written a script for, but for various reasons, it didn't quite work out in a timely fashion. So we decided, one night I was watching Raven Banner Entertainment puts on for one evening only across North America, horror films to show. And there was a short film that was quite frankly terrible that opened it up. And I thought, geez, a guy's got to be able to do better than that. And Herschell and I started talking, and we said, okay, let's try the anthology route. And it just kind of developed from there. And there was certain criteria that we decided we had to have. And we went through a lot of, we went through various writers, various producers, joining the team at various points. But finally, we ended up coming up with 4 stories that are distinct. All of them kind of pay homage to various genres. There's one that's very 80s splatter, one that's just a straight-out horror tale, one that's a comedy, one that's a psychological thriller. But the combining thread in them all is, of course, the Herschell-style gore. And we were trying very hard to have like a Twilight Zone ending to each of them.
Yeah. Now, how many of the stories, Herschell, were you involved with?
I wrote one front to back. I directed 2 of them, and the other 2 were directed by people Jim will tell you about. And in my opinion, where I was first, I won't say opposed to the notion, because I felt that the whole project was resting in too many sets of hands. Since then, I've come to believe something altogether different. Now, there's a Monty Python statement. And that is that in a movie like this, where you have 4 episodes, each of which is totally different from the other 3, somebody may screen this thing and say, well, I sure didn't like that one, but the others, it gives you another shot at them. It's like trying on clothes at a very fine store. And well, that shirt didn't fit me, but boy, look at this, and look at the jacket I got there. So it gives them many a chance to like what we did, even though they may dislike one of the episodes in there, because each of them appeals to a different emotion. And we've got them there, and I'm just very pleased to have been associated with this one.
And it definitely is the strength of anthologies. And Neil mentioned he loved them, and I know Troy and I both do as well.
Oh, yeah.
Hard not to, because like you said, there's that option of, there's a lot of anthologies I've seen that one of them, or I really truly dislike that one or the other. but then there can be a standout, just one of those stories that makes the film, and we love that story so much. You have a good feeling for the entire film overall, just because you have that one that you can connect with.
True. Very true.
Did you want to speak of the other two directors, James?
Well, yeah. One is a gentleman named Kevin Littlelight, graduate of the New York Film Academy, Canadian, who has a very, he wrote one of the scripts, co-wrote it along with a gentleman named Bob Schultz, who runs the Great American Pitch Fest, one of the founders of it. It's a segment about an 80s tribute band. So we're an all-female band. So you've got the big hair. It's basically an homage to 80s slashers films. You've got the rock music. You've got the big-haired girls. You've got the obligatory shower scene. It's a real homage piece, and very bloody. The other one was directed by a talented young lady named Melanie Reinbold, based on a story that I wrote, which may be the only one of the 4 segments that doesn't have Herschell's usual style of humor or satire. We go for straight out. It's psychological horror. I mean, you won't know until the last 30 seconds of the piece what's happening. The audience won't find out, and hopefully the payoff in the end is as big as we think it's going to be. But Melanie and Kevin did a really fine job, and I'm sure with the passage of time you'll be hearing more and more from them. Especially, and it's nice. One of the reasons that we do the shooting in Canada, and I told this to the president of Diabolique Films, Greg Petaludis, was I wanted to shoot in Canada because I'm a Calgarian myself. We shoot in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We want to promote the film industry here, and using local talent wherever possible, and that was kind of my goal.
Now, did you get to work with either of those directors yourself, Herschell, or did they just stick to their own?
We had sort of a family operation there, and one thing I should have mentioned, even though each episode is dramatically different from the other 3, they're tied together with a narrator and an intermediate piece between the individual segments, so that people will know that although we are starting a new segment here, it's all part of the totality of this movie. And I find these people to be very, very talented. That, to me, was the biggest surprise of all. I had expected enthusiasm. I had expected total cooperation. What I had no way of knowing about was the talent, including the talent to do the special effects, which is absolutely grade AAA. But I have been through enough of that I think I'm a pretty good gauge.
You mentioned special effects a few times, and when you started out doing these movies, and as you said, you created a whole genre. How hands-on were you when you started doing the gore movies with the gore effects?
We had to do everything absolutely from zero ground. Example: today you can walk into any magic store, and you will find hands that ruminate around. You will find arms that bend. You will find faces in which the eyeballs can be pulled out neatly. We didn't have any of that. We had department store mannequins. And as you know, a department store mannequin is stiff as a rock, which is really what many of them are. We also had no stage blood. I had made a movie some time before that called Living Venus, which was in black and white. And there's a scene in Living Venus in which the father of a girl that he's taking advantage of comes up to this leading man and slaps him, and a trickle of blood comes down the edge of his mouth. And that was the stage blood they had available at that time. But it was compounded for black and white film. It looked horribly stupid in color. And I was determined to shoot Bloodfeast in color. Nobody had made a movie of this type before. I figured if I'm going to go in for a penny, in for a pound. So we made our own stage blood. Now the next question is, what will suffice as blood, and yet they can get it out afterward? We didn't solve that problem on Bloodfeast. We found that out accidentally, and so it wound up that the gory scenes were the last thing we would shoot of an actress, I should say, because in Bloodfeast, all the people we killed off were women, and they would complain subsequently they couldn't get the stuff out of their hair, which led me to stage 2 of stage blood. So the stage blood we used here in Bloodmania is dramatically improved over what we had then. Not just in color, well, although we did get a good color out of it. Our basic unit there was kaopectate plus a red color. But this stage blood you could get into your veins, you'd die, but you wouldn't blame it on the blood. So in initiating this kind of movie, what were we going to do? There's a scene in Bloodfeast, the original movie, in which somebody reaches into a girl's chest and pulls out her heart. Easy enough, because hearts are hearts. I made a movie called The Gruesome Twosome, in which we pulled out an eyeball, and we picked up, we got a cow eyeball. Well, it turns out a cow's eyeball, you see only the front, but it's as big as a basketball. So we had to go out, and because we were already shooting, we stopped at a local grocery and bought some fish eyes, which worked out very well. The average person has no notion of what is under the skin, except they know it's not average. But that's how we started this whole thing, and movie by movie, step by step, to prevent us from simply redoing what we had already done. Because I object to that in any kind of entertainment, whether it's writing a book or shooting a movie or some performance on the stage. There's no point in doing, unless that's the limit of your talent. You can only do one thing, and that is not I don't want to be remembered that way.
Yeah.
So we have sophisticated these things now where people are not quite sure. I get these emails from people saying, I think I may have just said this here, was this a snuff film? I wouldn't go within 50 miles of anybody who made a snuff film. I'm not talking about shooting a film. I'm talking about the individual. That kind of mindset is not locked in entertainment. Rather, it's simply locked below ground.
Exactly. Now, how fun was that for you to, like you said, you didn't have stage blood, you couldn't go and get gore, you had to create these things. How fun as a filmmaker, as a creator, was that for you to think of, how to do these things and make them come to life on the screen?
Well, making movies is one of the happiest things you can do, because it's a combination of the creative and the technical. You will find other elements of entertainment that are entertaining, other elements that are technical. To have the two of them absolutely married, that's a blessing that not a lot of people have an opportunity to enjoy. So that's why I said, if Jim said to me, we're ready to shoot, come on up here, I'd come on up there and shoot, because to combine that with talented people who are enthusiastic themselves about the project. There's no boredom on the set there. And I have sat in other people's productions. The people on the crew have no relationship with the people who are in front of the camera. Good heavens, we'll often just cast somebody out of the crew we're short of talent and say, here, you want to be on the screen today, because we don't take it that seriously. And these are people who can compete. It's not quite that casual. What is casual is the camaraderie on the set, and I am very pleased with what we have.
See, we have a caller on the line, 423 area code. Who are you and where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Virginia. This is Shannon Wallen. Crazy Facebook geek that's always yelling about movies to you.
Excellent, excellent. Do you have a question for Herschell or James?
Well, I would just love to say thank you to Mr. Lewis, because he is just an incredible influence on my life since I've been a child. I was a video baby, and, I was kind of, I guess, introduced to Herschell Gordon Lewis through, reading horror magazines, of course, and then, with Frankenheimer's Basket Case, because it was dedicated to him at the end. And then, I go out to the video stores, and I find all these wonderful Herschell Gordon Lewis movies and watch them. And it has been just an incredibly amazing influence on me. And, now I work and do what I can with small and horror movies and everything. So, I would just like to thank you for what you brought to my life and a lot of other people's lives through your work. And thank God for Something Weird Video, bringing your stuff to us on disc.
I am grateful for that comment. I never know when somebody's going to talk about your movies, whether he's going to blast me or stroke me. So I did like what you said.
You're just, I know that's not really a question, and I am excited about your new movie, of course. But, that's really it. I just, you're a very, very important man to a lot of people, and I just, and I'm one of them. And I would just, just thank you for it. I mean, my goodness. I would like to ask a little, if you'd like to talk a little about this, of course you didn't direct it, but Body Shop, J.G. Patterson classic.
All right.
What about it?
I'm missing what the question is.
Yeah.
Oh, just any, how it came to be, how this, how you guys came together to make this.
All right. Now, I'm not any oracle as to how other people got into this business or got out of this business or were murdered by the business as they were murdering their cast. I do think that what has happened here, especially of late, and one reason I'm so grateful for the way we shot Herschell Gordon Lewis's Bloodmania, is almost anybody today who has a digital camera can claim to be a producer, a director, or a star. And that's a dangerous thing, because someone will look at one of these pieces of crap and say, oh, that's what this fuss is all about. And we all get flushed down the toilet because of somebody else's attitude. In my opinion, there's no way of judging. This is not like medicine where you have to have a specific set of degrees in order to practice. Anybody can make a movie. The question then that should enter into the minds, sometimes doesn't, is making a movie in itself parallel to making a movie that will entertain people who don't know what a genius you are. So that's what I'm constantly looking for. And I think Jim will testify. On our set, anybody who has an IQ over, let's say, 60 can make a suggestion that we take seriously. Sometimes the best things in a movie come from spur-of-the-moment suggestions by somebody on the cast and crew. And again, I have seen situations in which the person who made a suggestion was told, don't do that. We don't do that on our movies. The script is written. No. Nothing is final until it's in the box and somebody has bought it.
Oh, that's exactly correct. And I think the thing is, too, is given that we're not shooting on film, we have the opportunity to take suggestions and shoot them in multiple ways, shoot a scene in multiple ways, which is a freedom that digital allows, which is kind of nice. But when it comes down to things, I mean, when on a HGB Entertainment Limited set, I do like to hear opinions and ideas as the representative of Diabolique Films on set and that sort of thing. I mean, when you have a guy who's been in the business as long as Dave Traynor on special effects, and I don't, many of you may not know who Dave's work, but Dave worked on, Blade 2. He did the effects for Tucker and Dale versus Evil. He currently does the effects for Fargo, Hell on Wheels. He's been in it a number of years. So, what he brings to the table in terms of maybe we could do it this way, and if we did, like, let's say slit somebody's throat, if we did it this particular way with this appliance, it would look like the knife was buried deeper. And you go, gee, that's a pretty good idea. Thank you. Let's do that instead. So, we're always open to suggestions, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for calling in, Shannon.
Hey, thank you very much. I know it wasn't a very good question, not really a question at all, but I've always
no such
wanted
thing
to
as
say
bad
that, and
questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking my call, and Mr. Lewis, thank you very much for speaking with me.
We thank you.
So now that it's however many years past making your first film, how does that feel? Because I can imagine, you started making these crazy movies back then, and I don't think you probably thought that some guy or whoever would call in and say that you impacted their life because they saw a film of yours as a child. So how crazy is that? How strange or wonderful or confusing is that?
Well, it's the entertainment business, and one aspect that I think that all of us recognize immediately is you can't please all the people all the time. What we have here is a specialty. Some people who wander into our, I won't call it private little universe, not anymore, because the one thing we have proved, and maybe I personally, if you live long enough, you become legitimate, which I think is kind of funny because we were outlaws when we started this stuff. Mm-hmm. One aspect that I think should be driven home to anybody who may be listening to this show is, what are these people talking about? I've never seen one of these. They may not be very good grist for our mill. It takes, I won't say a background, I will say it takes an attitude that develops the way you develop an attitude toward eating caviar. The first time you dine on caviar, you say, what, fish eggs? Take them away. After a while, you'll go into the best restaurant in town and say, do you have beluga caviar? We who make beluga caviar for movies are much aware that people who are first-timers can have a different reaction until they get swept up in the time of the moment, which is why I don't object as much as I used to opening a movie by opening a box instead of having it in theaters. Nonetheless, I do think the ambience in a theater is the best way to initiate distribution of a movie.
Yeah, we're actually lucky enough to have a few theaters around us that show older films on the big screen, and it's fun to watch a movie on your computer, or on DVD, or on your TV, but there really is nothing like seeing the film as it's meant to be seen on the big screen.
You also have other people around you, Neil.
Exactly.
They add to your reaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned earlier about going to the screenings of your movies, and so were you surprised initially when if you were seeing a screening of Bloodfeast and people, I don't know what it was like, but were people started to laugh and enjoy themselves?
Well, originally they were laughing because of the lack of production value, but that's the first thing I learned that has kept me in this business all these years, while others will make one movie and then disappear. And that is, what matters is only one element. It's not what a ragged pan or what crapola acting that was. What matters is having them come out of the theater saying, did you see that? And then they'll phone somebody and say, here's something you got to see. Now, the movie stinks, but you got to see this. I have often referred to Bloodfeast as parallel to a poem by Walt Whitman. I say it was no good, but it was the first of its kind. And I'm being unkind to my own child there. But I did not ever anticipate sitting in a theater and looking at people around me who were reacting positively to something I was embarrassed to do. It's a very good lesson in personal relationships.
And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but Fuad Ramses really is one of my favorite villains ever in a movie.
Well, Fuad Ramses was a fellow named Mal Arnold. And Mal Arnold had the previous movie I had made, which was called Scum of the Earth, was a tough kid. And that's that he became Fuad Ramses. I'm sorry, Ray Sager was Fuad Ramses. Let me think here.
Mal Arnold.
Ray Sager was the Wizard of Gore. Pardon me.
Both of them.
Mal Arnold was Fuad Ramses. That shows how transitory fame can be. Today's Fuad Ramses is tomorrow's Montag the Magnificent. But suddenly, here is an actor who had shown up. We didn't hold auditions. We sort of let word out that this was going to be available, and Mal Arnold was going to play Fuad Ramses. Why? His talent, he's still around. I got to be careful what I say because he's in the real estate business here in Fort Lauderdale, which is an indication that people don't suddenly disappear off your lives because they've been in one of my movies. But what we did there was smear him up in the most primitive way you can imagine, with silver shoe polish, little bits and pieces to give him an aged look. And we told him to drag one leg when he walked, which we felt would add a little more to the negative aspect of his personality. So Mal Arnold became Fuad Ramses, and he still shows up at some of these film conventions. He never had another role after that that would match what he had here, which is understandable because there's a uniqueness. But I understand there is a Fuad Ramses fan club, if you can believe it.
I need to join.
A fellow named Jackie Morgan made a movie called Bloodfeast 2. Mm-hmm. And he had another actor, of course, by now, Mal Arnold is rather long in the tooth, and I don't think it would be quite an effective Fuad Ramses today, besides which, the original Fuad Ramses was ground up in the back of a garbage scow and turned into hamburger. But the person whom Jackie Morgan cast to be Fuad Ramses III, he looked for the exact parallel to the reasons we had found the first Fuad Ramses, which meant that the character itself had established itself positively in his mind. And there's a critic, if I ever saw one, someone who's making a competitive picture.
Now, one of my favorite parts of the sequel to Bloodfeast was the casting of John Waters. How did that come about? How did the relationship with John Waters come about?
Well, John and I are old friends because we both take a rather cynical view of almost every aspect of life, certainly including making movies. John claims that I was the reason for his being in the movie business to start with. Mm-hmm. A lot of years back, to my total astonishment, I didn't really know him then. He came down to interview me for a book he was writing. I found that to be fascinating, the whole notion. We became very good friends. Whenever I go to Baltimore, we'll have dinner together. When he is down in Florida, we'll have dinner together. And I said to him one day, how would you like to have a part in a movie? Yeah. But since then, he plays a pedophile priest, as you know, in that movie.
Yes, exactly.
Since then, John has joined Screen Actors Guild, and that prevents him from appearing in my kind of movie. So in the end of February, I think it is, there's a huge, or they claim it's huge, horror film conference here in South Florida, where I am. And John Waters will be there. And we'll have our little reunion again there. But it's simply a matter of personal friendship.
Mm-hmm. Are you
so that was really interesting what you just said about him being prevented from being in your kind of film. What exactly is the rule there? I'm very curious.
Wait, I'm missing your question. Your voice is breaking up here. Could you repeat that, please?
You said just now that because John Waters is a member of the Screen Actors Guild, he cannot be in your kind of film. Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure, I'm delighted to do that. Because at one time, I was a member of Screen Actors Guild. Because I was, that's before, when I was young and foolish, I took the wrong advice, which cost me a lot of money, before I realized that membership in Screen Actors Guild is roughly parallel to having a driver's license. There are a lot of people who can accomplish the same thing, but all you're doing with that is eliminating the possibility of some people working together. When he first appeared in one of my other movies, I said, let's make a movie together. He said, yeah, let's do that. And it sort of just never happened. And it was only recently that I realized why it never happened, because John, as does occur in human frailties, thinks he's a good actor. And he may well be a good actor. But if he is a good actor, then I would love to have him in a movie. If he isn't a good actor, I would love to have him in a movie. And I've just encapsulated the reason I don't think that Screen Actors Guild adds anything to somebody's image. So when I said to him, you want to get into this movie? I'd kill to get in there, but I can't. It seems to me if you're going to kill somebody, you can. I'm not about to enter into an open argument with that union situation, which I have faced in a great many cases, not just with SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, but with the IA, that is International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, with the Teamsters, and we all peacefully coexist. As long as it's peaceful, that's fine with me, because I don't mind competition on any level. The one point I will make in my personal favor, and I say this to people like John who have made a choice, is you can make 2 of another movie for what it costs you to make the movie you're in. But that doesn't bother a lot of actors because they're not involved in the financial end of movie making. John Waters is, and I'm still surprised that he made that choice, but it's his choice.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about Mike Vraney, who passed away recently, who was from Something Weird Video, and if you had any memories of him, and how important do you think Something Weird Video was to getting your movies out to modern audiences?
Enormously. That's the only word I can use. Gigantically. Mike Vraney, who ran Something Weird Video out of Seattle, had named his company after a movie I made. I'll call it a secondary product called Something Weird, which I thought was rather strange, but okay, that's Mike Vraney. He and his wife, named Linda Petrucci, I think her name is, or Lisa Petrucci,
she's wonderful.
Formed this company, and suddenly, because I don't own most of those old movies anymore myself, a fellow named Jimmy Maslin, Maslon, now owns these. I was getting communications from Jimmy Maslin asking if I had some post-production materials that I could send to Mike Vraney, because Mike Vraney was taking over secondary distribution of these movies. And I said, well, somebody's crazy here, because if I thought these movies had any life left in them, I would not have disposed of them. Mm-hmm. Well, that shows how cloudy the crystal ball can be. Because since then, and this has to be close to 30 years ago, these movies are shown all over the place. They're still showing in theaters, if you can believe it. Beat up, scratched prints full of splices showing in theaters. Mm-hmm. Well, then I ran into Mike Vraney personally. I found him to be quite a literate and gentlemanly guy who differs from a lot of people in the movie business in that he doesn't let greed overrun his desire to make a friend of the people he's doing business with. That's a rare trait. In the movie business, it's almost extinct. And so he would arrange for me to appear at some of these events. And if Mike Vraney suggested it, I would be there. So it was something of a shock to a lot of people because he doesn't share our vintage. Mike had to be a good 30 years younger than I am. For him to simply die that way, very, very sad. But his wife is maintaining Something Weird Video. Mm-hmm. And anything any of us in the outside edge can do to help that is, I think, a very wise move. Because Something Weird Video is a rare, rare kind of business in movie distribution.
Yeah,
we just met her in Seattle a couple of months ago, and she's just a lovely, lovely person, and she really is trying so much to just keep it going, keep it in the minds of people. And it's unique, just like your own stuff. It's a unique company, and there's so much heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have said on the show, again, not just because you're here, but your commentary tracks on the Something Weird videos of your movies are some of my favorite commentary tracks of any movie.
I got to agree, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
Got to agree.
Yeah, so they really add a lot. Obviously, I don't think you would listen to a commentary track unless you're familiar with the movie, but when you listen to the comment, you really add a lot of insight to it, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to.
Well, my understanding of this whole industry is people who look at your movies fall onto three levels. One, those who are gore hounds. Two, those who say, oh, well, what the hell? And those who say, how did I get into this? Who will take a look or listen to a commentary track on a cheap movie that really doesn't have any star name value? Those are people I treasure. And yet again, I've heard people say, oh, I don't want to bother with that. Let the guy who ran the camera be on that. That's not the way this works if you want it to work. Mm-hmm. And there again, that was a contribution Mike Vraney gave this industry. Another indication of his personality. Mm-hmm. If you want to send a communication to Something Weird Video, you don't address it to Something Weird Video. You address it to Lisa Petrucci. And that's his wife, or his widow now. Mm-hmm. Very rare. Much missed. Mm-hmm. As is Dave Friedman, my former partner.
Yeah. Now, James, I do want to ask, when will all of us get to see Bloodmania?
We're looking right now at a May release date. Now that depends on a number of factors. We'll be done the film by then. We have several distribution models in mind, and one of them a lot of it depends on whether or not we can secure a theatrical release, which I'm not ruling out.
Mm-hmm. No.
But generally speaking, spring of 2015.
Mm-hmm. And you can go to bloodmania.ca to find information out there. And I really like the artwork that's up there. You can get the limited edition print right now of Herschell. Yeah,
it's a beautiful print. It's done by one of Diabolique magazine's cover artists, renowned horror artist Steve McGuinness. And Steve will also be doing our actual poster rather than our teaser.
Mm-hmm. How hands-on, Herschell, were you with your posters and cover art?
That was strictly Jim's doing, because I look at that poster art and I say, if I'm going to look like that, I'm going to require 2 years of facial work. No, there's an element there that I positively yield to James Saito.
Now, on your older films, how hands-on would you have been, and what would you think?
Totally.
And what are the
Totally.
what are the main
It,
things you think people overlook when putting out a poster?
one is the type of words one uses. For example, Dave Freeman and I got into an argument at one point. I wanted to use the phrase gouts of blood. He says, the word gouts doesn't go with blood. I said, yes, it does. It's in Shakespeare. That's how far back it goes. He didn't want to use gouts of blood. But a couple of pictures later, he and I split up, and he went to California to try his fortunes elsewhere. So I was free to use gouts of blood in one of my other movies. That's what separates some of these movies from others. People in our industry don't often screen a movie the way they would with something that had a big budget or top name actors and is fighting for opening in a major theater. They look at the campaign and they say, will people buy this? And that's my attitude toward almost anything. Will people buy this? The idea of using the campaign to show off your own talent is, in my opinion, a critical mistake. But we see it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Now, you'd mentioned, really liking the special effects in Bloodmania, but even before you got to that point, there had to be something about the film that had you interested, which I would assume you get a lot of offers to be part of other film projects. But what was it about Bloodmania that made you decide this is something I do want to be part of?
Well, that's an easy one to answer. I talked to a fellow who said, do you have a script? I said, every cab driver in California has a script on the seat next to him just in case. He says, do you want to shoot something? I said, that's why I exist on this planet. He says, okay, let's get together and make a movie. Your script, will you direct? Why, yeah, hell yes, I'll direct. And that's what put it together. And that is my attitude toward movie making, provided there is any integrity at all on the other side. Mm-hmm. Because that's how Jim and I met, in fact. Somebody in Spain wanted to make a movie, approached me on rather illegitimate grounds, I thought. I didn't know at the time it was illegitimate grounds. And he had planned to attend this little festival up in Calgary and said, we'll meet there. But between then, that communication and the time of the Calgary get-together, I found out that he was full of hot air. But you don't know that until you have some background. In the case of Bloodmania, the question didn't exist at all. The deal that I made with Jim Saito was absolute gold. Everybody involved has kept his word or her word from beginning to end. And that's why I say, if somebody says, we want to shoot a movie in Calgary, my answer will be, how soon?
James, you're working with Herschell. What kind of things do you think you've learned, as a producer going forward?
Well, there's a long story behind that because I wasn't supposed to be the on-hand, sort of on-site producer for this film. Circumstance just found me doing this. So essentially I involved myself with every aspect of the film, from casting to prop making, everything. Just so I could familiarize myself with a lot of it. And I'm the Gore effects supervisor. Because I know as a Gore fan what exactly I want, but watching all three of these directors has been quite illuminating because each has such a different style. Just watching the process and to work with somebody who's been doing it for so many years, like Herschell has. I mean, I was first of all like a little kid again, but just learning from all the professionals, because I'm basically a marketer, And that's, one of the reasons Herschell and I kind of get along. I mean, I was at one point going to be an English professor. Herschell taught English. We just have so many parallels and things we can talk about in common that, I think there was a friendship before there was a business relationship established. So, it's just been a wonderful experience. And one of the things that we were doing, and we did while Herschell was here, was we filmed introductions to a bunch more episodes. Because in Bloodmania, Herschell is kind of the Rod Serling character, a la Night Gallery, Twilight Zone.
Oh,
He introduces each segment and makes an appearance in one, and so now we have a series of introductions for the same theme. So basically, what I'm planning now is that we begin shooting a short film every 3 months, as well as our feature film that we want to shoot every year with Diabolique Films. And so at the end of a year, we would have enough for another Herschell Gordon Lewis anthology. And of course, we want Herschell to be as hands-on as possible, come and direct again, and write more segments, and just be heavily involved. I mean, that's again, it seems natural, and that way, Mr. Lewis can maintain his industry work at his own pace. So it just seems like
exciting to hear about. Really, that you guys are really set on sticking with this, and anybody that's going to be into these films, who wouldn't love this? I mean, just as from a fan's point of view, who wouldn't love that? Yeah,
well, that's what I think. So, I'm glad we're on the same page there. It is exciting.
I was going to ask, too, because you were saying how you came into this and you had a certain idea of what your role would be going into all of this. And then you ended up taking on all these other responsibilities and duties. And how does it feel? Because that's where Herschell came from, is as he said himself, he ended up doing so many different aspects of what was going on because he just had to. So now having had that experience, how does that make you feel moving forward as opposed to just been with what you would originally intended your role to be?
Well, first off, I don't feel, in the beginning, of course, you question, can I do this? You ask yourself that constantly, and now I'm past that imposter syndrome where I feel like, I am the producer of this movie. And I feel very confident moving forward in producing other films, other types of films. It's just something that has to be learned, and you go through it. It is producing a film. Being the producer is probably the only job I've ever done where you go through moments of complete elation, to moments of complete stress, and utter disappointment, and that can be in the course of 10 minutes. There are so many things that you have to deal with on a constant basis, because I'm also doing the marketing with Greg Petaludis and Herschell. We're trying unique ways, and I guess I should explain that. I don't know how many fans are aware of what Mr. Lewis does for his daytime job. I mean, he's one of the most renowned marketers in North America. Greg Petaludis at Diabolique magazine has over 30 years of experience in marketing, as do I. So the three of us are combining our talents and efforts to try to do things a little bit differently. Because, we're in kind of a limbo here with film distribution in a new era. We're going to try some things that, haven't been tried before, and just see, given our expertise, if we can do something significantly different that, may increase our back end. Let's be honest.
You want to increase your back end.
Yeah. If we're being honest here, of course. I mean, it is a business, and Mr. Lewis stresses that. It's called show business for a reason. We're not making films to...
Kim Kardashian can show you how to increase your rear end.
Now, about the marketing thing, actually, I was looking at Herschell. I was looking at your site, and it is fascinating. I really love reading it because you market yourself as a product, and it's absolutely fascinating.
Well, I mean, that is what we do. I mean, that's what, if you look at the average Hollywood film and you look at what they do to promote themselves, sometimes it's very confusing, and you get the feeling that, that the studios don't know what they're doing anymore. When you want to have when you really, when Sony is discussing whether or not they should have a crossover movie with Men in Black and 21 Jump Street, you have to wonder what the hell they're smoking, So, yeah, I mean, it reminds me of an old saying William Goldman, the screenwriter, is famous for, and in Hollywood, no one knows anything. So, I mean, really, none of us do. All we can do is as marketers, try to come up with something that hasn't been done before. And I think that's something that, we're primarily concerned with.
Mm-hmm. When you said about filming like every 3 months a new short, would you release them as shorts and then as an anthology, or wait till you had like?
No, we'll do them as an anthology. Mm-hmm. And who knows, down the road we may offer them, for sale individually. I mean, again, it's one of those things that, that's still down the road. But no, the plan is to release them as an anthology.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask Herschell, did you find any good fried chicken in Canada?
Absolutely. I can find fried chicken any place. At the South Pole, I can find fried chicken. I'm a good hunter of fried chicken. That's my best claim to fame. I can find fried chicken no matter where I am.
Now, Neil and I do a review show called Dinner and a Movie, and occasionally we do travel. So could you tell us where you've had the best fried chicken? And hopefully someday we can go to that place and check it out.
Well, I'm not sure what the question is here.
Where's the best fried chicken you've had?
I understand, but it depends on how we're relating this. The best fried chicken is the one I had today because yesterday I couldn't get out to get it. But that's not an answer to your question. I evaluate, for example, which is a better fried chicken, Popeyes or Colonel Sanders? And I've come to a conclusion there, but I don't want to get picketed by somebody. If you insist, I'll tell you what my answer is. But the kind of fried chicken that I like is the extra crispy kind of thing, not the one that's dripping with grease. And that eliminates some kinds of fried chicken to start with. I really don't want to go down in the pages of motion picture history as, we remember him, he liked fried chicken. But I do. That's always safe. That's something else. Now, your cardiologist will tell you, fried chicken will kill you. It'll constrict your blood vessels. You'll wind up lying in a gutter somewhere with chicken parts oozing out of your mouth. I don't see it that way. I see fried chicken as one of the great delights on a civilized level.
Well, my grandmother just turned 90.
Fine, so I think you've already proven them wrong.
Yeah, I've got to say, for Neil and I, our grandmother is 90 years old and makes the best fried chicken I've ever had. And
well, in that case,
she eats her own fried chicken, so...
Yeah, but in order for me to evaluate it, you understand I'm going to have to sample it.
All right, I'll talk to Betty Jones and see if she can hook you up with some fried chicken.
That makes this whole conversation a success.
I want to ask, because we've had him on the show a couple times, we talked to him, is Joel Reed. And do you have any thoughts on Joel Reed and the similarities, or maybe you don't see any similarities between Wizard of Gore and Blood-Sucking Freaks?
That's a competitive question, and I better leave the answer to that in James Saito's hands.
No, put me on the spot.
See, it's a tough one to answer because we all look at competing product with a jaundiced eye. Example, and this is off the point you brought up here. Here's a movie based on a story that Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote over 100 years ago, which was titled John Carter of Mars. They put it together recently as a movie. What did they title the movie? John Carter. That's the total title of that movie. My reaction was, what a terrific opportunity they missed. I would not hire any of these people to work for me in a promotional capability. But that, again, it's competitive. Let some critics for some newspapers take that job.
That ended up being one of the biggest flops ever made.
Well, I got a bigger one for you, with Johnny Depp in it, the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Disney is taking a $200 million write down on that movie. $200 million write down. If I had to lose $200 million on a movie, I'd feel it.
I think most people probably would. Have you ever actually had an Egyptian feast?
Oh, sure, everybody has. But see, one benefit of the kind of movie we make, it never dies. These movies have legs. And I've had a couple that started off just crawling. It's like a child that then begins to start tottering around on its feet. And then it walks tall. And then eventually it needs a cane or maybe a walker or maybe a wheelchair to keep going. But it's still alive. These movies don't die. That is one of the miracles of this type of motion picture. And it does not apply to movies that depend on star name value to get ahead, because movies with star name value automatically date themselves as they are released. So I like our approach.
Andre here on Facebook, he says, someone called in and people have talked about that you've inspired them to get into movies. Who inspired you to get into movies in the first place?
An accident, I guess, is the word. I don't know how deep you want it. We're running out of time here, but I will give you a very quick recapitulation. As Jim pointed out a while back, I started what I laughingly call my career as a school teacher. I taught English literature at a college in which I felt I had found a nice home because my specialty was English poetry of the Victorian era. Queen Victoria took the throne in 1837 and died in 1901, and that was the golden age in which we had Browning, we had Tennyson, we had A.E. Housman, we had memorable poetry, and right before them were Byron and Shelley and Keats, lions and tigers and bears. So I felt that would be my career, but it wasn't, because I also began to think I could make more money doing something else. So I got a part-time job while I was still teaching school, writing for an advertising agency, which then asked me to come to work for them. And it was like a Mario Puzo story. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. So I got into advertising because the fellow who owned that agency told me he needed a television director. He was about to pick up a major account, and I would be his television director. This was back in Chicago. So I took that job and very quickly found that I'd made a mistake because he did not pick up that account. But meanwhile, we were shooting commercials at a little studio on Wabash Avenue. I'll give you the truth of this thing. The studio was called Alexander and Associates. It had two partners, Mike Alexander and Marty Schmidhofer. But it was called Alexander and Associates. Mike Alexander left the company. What was the name of the company then? Alexander and Associates. Marty Schmidhofer desperately needed a partner. Another moment of insanity, I bought a half interest in that studio. We called it Lewis and Martin Films. And we began to compete for television commercials because the big agencies were all going to California to shoot their commercials. Why? Because all we had was 16 millimeter equipment The California studios had 35 millimeter equipment, and that made a difference psychologically, if only that way. Nothing would do but that I buy 35 millimeter equipment, which I did. The big agencies still went to California. One day I was complaining to someone I barely knew about the movie business. He said, well, how do you make any money in that business? Without thinking, I said, the only way to make money is to shoot features. He said, why don't you shoot features? Which is like saying, why aren't you rich? That planted the nasty seed. And I decided to shoot a feature, not realizing all of the pieces I should have known in order to get into that I still existed after making that first feature, which was called The Prime Time, that I even was able to walk out onto the streets. A miracle, absolutely. But that's how you get educated and if you're lucky, you survive the education.
Annabelle, do you have a question?
Oh, I did have a question, is that when this film comes out, will we get barf bags?
Jim, that's in your
all you can do when you're making a film of this nature is try to come up with new gore gags that really haven't been seen before. And I think really, because there's a plethora of them out there. I mean, in subsequent years from when Herschell began the genre, and if you look at The Walking Dead on a weekly basis, I mean, there's only so many things a person can do that haven't been seen before. So I think we've been lucky that way. There's going to be some sequences that, you just really, there's a few that haven't been shot. And so we've got a few of those. We've got, and a lot of it depends on perspective, camera perspective, and everything else. So the way things are portrayed on screen. So no, I mean, ultimately, what we want is we want people to go and have a good time watching the film. We want, we want a little broader appeal than the gore hounds. So, we want people to laugh. We want people to be scared. We want people to enjoy some of the, the gore effects that we have. We want it to be an overall experience. Because, there's so many subgenres of horror. We want to, we really want to appeal to a broader audience.
Well, I meant quite literally. Are you going to issue barf bags? Because I know that had happened. I believe at Bloodfeast, you gave out barf bags in the beginning of the film. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Well, that's how the industry sophisticates itself from the back end. Mm-hmm. Hey, folks, this has been a very, very pleasant experience for us, and we do thank you for having us on the show.
Yeah, loved having you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. And, we urge people to come out and check out bloodmania.ca. Follow us on Twitter at bloodmania. Like us on Facebook. Do the whole works. And, and if you'd like to have us on again later, on another day or that kind of thing, we'd certainly be happy to accommodate you.
Yeah, we'll have all the links right on the website for everybody to check this out. And yeah, when the movie's closer to coming out, we'd love to have you back on.
Oh, that'd be excellent.
All right.
We thank you.
Thank you guys very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to both of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Hello, this is Lawrence R. Harvey, and you're listening to withoutyourhead.com. Although how you're listening to withoutyourhead.com without your head, I simply don't know.